Alix. Welcome to the Names and Coffee podcast. Woo! This is going to be so much fun. I've wanted to do this for forever, but man, life gets busy. Gets rolling. You get dreams and ideas, but then the rude awakening of the booger you find on your shirt and having these priorities of like, oh, I have to get breakfast for my kids and the dream has to wait. But it makes it so much sweeter. The more you chew on it and think about it, why do I want this dream? Why do I have this dream? What is making me want to pursue this? How is this wound into my guts and my heartstrings? And then I think the beautiful thing is, even if sometimes it feels frustrating, when you have higher priorities, it makes you find out what's important about it. It makes you evaluate if it's worth it. It makes you, trim the fat. And it's like that old farm truth, the cream will rise to the top. When you milk a cow, it all goes into a tank and there's a churner in there that keeps it all mixed together. But when you turn that off, the cream rises to the top. So I don't know how many of you drink raw milk, but if you go to your refrigerator, the milk will be separated and the cream will be on the top. And that's how you would strain it for butter. So what is that super, super rich thing that you're wanting to pursue? And obviously I have dreams, we all do, and I'm trying to hone that. When I close my eyes and I try to visualize my goals, what am I doing? Who am I? And I believe names are a vehicle for that for me. They're part of that. I've really tried to analyze why I love names because, let's be honest, it's a little weird to talk about it at the Thanksgiving dinner table. Nobody's asking you about your favorite names. It's like collecting stamps or being a baseball card collector. If you're immersed in something, that's great, but the majority isn't. But I am. So I've kept to myself about it. And I actually think that's how it's been for most, if not all of us namers. A lot of our family doesn't even know about this hobby, this interest of ours. Why are we embarrassed about it? Because it seems weird? Why? Is it because we don't know how to talk about why we like it? Because I think it's more than just names. I think it's way deeper. For me, I noticed in kindergarten that names set you apart. I was the only Alix in the whole entire school. I even knew Alix was mostly a boy's name and mine was different because it was spelled with an I. And there was my classmate Shane, and he had a shark tooth necklace, and I thought Shane is the coolest ever. And I didn't even know why I noticed that, but I did. And as I got older, and my mom got pregnant with my youngest brother, and there was that pursuit of naming him, and the idea that there was this opportunity of naming this nameless person a name they would have for the rest of their life. And it fascinated me. Isn't that crazy? That it's your name? And even if you ended up changing it, that name is woven into the fabrics of your being. You'll always remember being called a certain name. That's crazy. And so I've been on this pursuit of, why do I love names? What's the deal? It's not just letters and sounds and first impressions. Why do I love names? Why do we have our favorite names? Why do we have a list? Why? Why is there this pursuit to name our kids something meaningful? How is it that you have your own preferences and your own favorites and that we're all different? Isn't that crazy? We're all people, but we all have different tastes. And yeah, of course, we can have similar tastes, but we're all a little different. Why is that? When I was creating my book, Trending and Timeless Baby Names, and my Name Mentor's Guide to Peacefully Crafting Your Baby's Name, which is available on Amazon and thenamementor.com, I looked through my book and through my name lists, and I thought, wow, these are some really nice names. Really good-looking names. And I noticed on quite a few of them, they were from my very own favorites list. And a lot of them I had known about since I was a kid. And I'd known about them since I was a kid because they are woven into my family history and my story. And I don't think it's coincidence that I'm also the kind of person that loves genealogy, and I was the kid at 15 who was on Ancestry.com. Fascinating. Like, where did I come from? What are my genes made of? Who went before me? So powerful. And so one of the reasons that I was devastated when I realized I wouldn't be naming my daughter Sally is I love Reagan's name. She is totally a Reagan. It's beautiful. But I went through a time of legitimate mourning when I realized this. Why? Well, because Sally was the name of my grandma. Yeah, but why? And I think it's because our preferences and our heartstrings are so woven into each other and to what's important to us in our story. I think names are just the sum of storytelling. You can say, yeah, but I have this name on my list and I don't think it's connected to anything. And I guarantee you it is. I guarantee it. I guarantee you it is. I tend to like folk names. What do I mean by folk? You know, the John Denver, Rustin Kelly kind of folk. The style of folk. I have some of what I would consider folk names on my list, and I'm not folky. I am corn-fed country farm girl. Well, because to me, I think a synonym for folk is sylvan, woodsy, earthy, outdoorsy, stripped down, acoustic. And I don't mean hipster, because I believe hipster transcends country into city and all that. I mean like folk. When I think of the name Fox, I think the name Fox is very folk. And I love the name Fox, and I love the name Fox Margaret and Margaret Fox. That seems so left field until I thought about it one day, and I grew up next to the most magical land ever that I would ride my horse on, and it was owned by a woman named Mrs. Fox. Could it be that reminds me of all of those memories of me riding my horse in this dreamland? Do you see what I mean? It's fascinating. And I just can't help but see that human beings are storytelling creatures. Wanting meaning, wanting authenticity, wanting something that transcends all that life brings, transcends time and environments. When people say, I want a unique name, what does that mean? They want something that stands out, that says, hey, this kid is special. Which is why I don't poo-poo that. I am not the mainstream poo-pooer. I'm not like, oh, but your name is popular and it's spelled too unique. Like, what is the heart behind those? What is the story? What is the sum of all the events of those two people's lives that led them to that moment where they chose that name? I just don't believe that it's happenstance. I think that's why we're so drawn and territorial sometimes to our favorite names. Why do we talk about name theft? Like, that's my name that I picked. Well, it's not like you were at a restaurant and you ordered your favorite food that you really liked and somebody came over and stole your plate. Why are we so possessive of names? Because they're a part of our story. The sounds, the memories. Sometimes I hear a name and I smell something. Sometimes I'll hear a name and it'll put me back into a place and a time or a situation. When I hear the name Fox, I smell the woods. I smell the damp earth underneath the ferns. I absolutely treasure the woods because for me, that was my escape as a kid. Riding my horse, it saved my life. And I am so incredibly, incredibly lucky that I had horses as a part of my childhood. I didn't realize how lucky I was until I became an adult. I remember one time I was out riding my horse and I was out all by myself. And when you traverse ground, when you trek through familiar ground, your senses and your subconscious remember stuff. If you're paying attention, you say, hey, something smells different, something smells funny. Don't all the woods smell the same? No. Have you ever smelled a mountain lion or a wolf or a coyote or a baby skunk? The earth smells differently in different seasons. And the sights, and if you're riding through the woods and there are no bird sounds, you should be watching because there's a reason the birds aren't chirping. So I was riding my horse through this beautiful field of wildflowers, which is probably why I have the name Daisy on my favorites list and meadow and prairie. And tucked up into the woods, it was a beautiful late spring golden morning in the Catskill Mountains of New York. And laying down, bedded down in this beautiful long green grass in a little nest, a doe was calving. And I literally stood at a little distance and watched a doe give birth to her fawn. That marked me. That changed me. How could I not have that story told through the favorite things of my life? Including, everybody picks on me because I always have a tree somewhere in my house. People say, Alix, you're literally the only person we know who decorates with trees. Well, I can tell you why. They were my refuge and my heaven and my safe haven when I was growing up. I feel comfortable around trees. I like the story that they tell. I like that they change in seasons. And it was amongst the trees I saw the deer calf. And it was amongst the trees that I saw horses with their foals. There's something sacred about storytelling. One of the mainstream poo-poo things in the naming community is not wanting parents to name their kids juniors and thirds and fourths. And they say, your kid needs their own identity. We're all from something, no matter what our name is. I would love having my grandmother's name right now because I don't have my grandma. So every time somebody said my name, I would be able to think of my grandma. And maybe that's why I wanted to name my daughter Sally, as a reminder that there was a woman before you who stood. And you can say, well, what if that person was a terrible person? Guess what? You get to change history. Is that not so exciting? Whew. The potential that you get to be a major part of somebody else's story. I find this fascinating. It's amazing how lucky we are in this day and age to be able to touch people across the world. To touch people across the world. To have people talk about their native names and their native language. Oh, it's so amazing. And so I wanted to leave you this food for thought today. If you are expecting and have a list of names, or you're not expecting and have a list of names, but especially if you're expecting and have a list of names, and you're like, how do I choose? You've got to let your cream rise to the top. What is important to you? Those things will always be a part of your story. What is the story that is the most important to tell? What is the thing that you want to say every time you speak to your kid? What do you want to speak over them? Wow. I just love you guys. You are kind and smart, and you are your own person. You are knit in with this amazing thing called humanity, and we're all different colors, and we're all over the world, all different languages, and we are lucky ducks. We are lucky ducks. I hope this finds you well. I hope you had a great cup of coffee. If you had a cup of tea, I forgive you. I love you bunches, and I will talk to you next time.